Welcome to the Daily Dose of B podcast. I'm your host, Brittany, and I'm about to give you a window into the mind of yours truly. In a world where journaling is passé and self-awareness is deficient among us all, here's your Daily Dose of B.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Daily Dose of B podcast. I am finally getting hip to the fact that if you are recording for video, you're supposed to not do it like up and down. It's supposed to be selfie style. So if you're listening to this on audio, and then you want to switch to YouTube because it actually looks like I functionally know how to use my camera, then you will be pleasantly surprised. I decided to record outside today, which I know is like against the audio rules. So I'm hoping that I can maybe fix the audio in post, but if I can't, you'll all just sort of have to suffer with me and all the woodland creatures you can kind of hear making noise, and that's just the way it's going to be tonight because I'm just feeling like being outside. I've been craving it pretty bad lately. That's why my skin looks better, and I feel like I'm like losing weight again finally, which is so nice. So there you go. That's your life update. Today's episode is, and you're gonna also, if you're watching on camera, you're gonna see me itching because I live in the mosquito capital of the world, and so we're just dealing with that right now. Today's topic is one that is near and dear to my heart that I've been meaning to just do a deep dive in because I feel like I've kind of touched on it in a bunch of different episodes, and also I've done deeper dives with this on other people's podcasts, but I haven't actually on my own gone into it. And I've also like run this sort of information by a lot of folks in my life, and I think that most of the people that hear me out and like listen to it long form tend to agree with me, which I don't know what it means. If a lot of people agree with you, that could mean you're wrong, you know? And I feel like there's this sort of inherent narcissism in thinking that you have something to say. So like, it's honestly kind of weird for me to be in the position of saying anything about anything. But like, we need more people just to talk long form and express themselves so that like we can clarify our own thoughts. So that's why this is Daily Dose of B podcast, because, well, it's not daily, but it is like kind of a pill of some sort. It's kind of a vitamin, of like a little dose of reality, I guess, from my perspective. And I think that we could all use to just clarify for ourselves what it is that we believe. And the only way that I can do that well is through speaking. I actually had an English teacher who told me in high school that I needed to get my writing to be as clear and to sound as mature as my speaking. He's like, when you're talking and explaining a subject, you sound so clear and like unconvoluted, and when you're writing, you like try and get all fancy and it mucks it up, which is real. So just to have my thoughts clear, JVP would be proud. I'm talking through my thoughts on this episode, and I kind of wanted to address dating in 2023 in terms of like hookup culture, traditional relationships and traditional gender roles in relationships, and kind of what I'm seeing overall. And this is the feedback that I'm getting. I like talk to everyone about their dating experiences, even if it's a guy I'm not like that interested in. Like, one of my first questions is usually like, what's dating been like for you? You know, what types of women do you meet? Talk to me about them. Like, what do they look like? What do they sound like? What kind of car do they drive? What kind of, you know, thing are they doing? And I try and get an idea about what it is that they are so that I can like further educate myself, right? Because like, I'm just one person, so I can't assume that all the women out there are like me, right? That's kind of dumb. And especially if you know that I have like these very odd views. I consider myself a voluntarist. I don't know how many people self-identify that way, but it's got to be less than 1 million, you know? Maybe it's grown past that, but I don't think so. So like, I understand like I'm not the mean, like I'm not the standard, but at the same time, I am interested in what the standard is, right? So I had a personal experience that kind of like led me to sort of sort this out, because I was kind of always under the assumption that like attractive masculine men went for a certain type of woman, and I think that I embody a lot of the things that masculine men are looking for. I also am a little bit masculine myself, like I mean that in like the true form of like what are technically masculine personality types, like being low in disgust. Like I'm a low in disgust sensitivity person. It's kind of hard to gross me out, which is not true for most women. It's what keeps them from sleeping around usually, is they're high in disgust. And I think I'm high in disgust in like relational ways. Like it's pretty easy for someone to disgust me with how they talk or what they have to say, but it's much more difficult for me to get like disgusted by like bodily fluids or whatever. And maybe that's part being a mom, I don't know. But I definitely feel like because I'm more disagreeable, like I probably do present masculine in some frames, but I think especially in the dating game, like because of the way I'm approaching it and like handling myself, I think I'm doing a pretty good job of like attracting masculine men. And they seem to respond very well to like me having the understandings that I do about the way the world works, right? Like about understanding how the dating game has changed, and how a lot of men, I mean, it's like 86 or something. It's a really high, I think it's actually 63. I think I'm exaggerating. Somewhere between 60 and 80% of men between 18 and 26, or maybe it's 18 and 30. Do not quote me on that stat, but you can look it up. It's a staggering statistic. It's way more than 50% of men in that age group have not had one sexual partner in the last year, which is like new. That wasn't true 30 or 40 years ago. And part of that is we're marrying later. And so men used to have more sex younger because they were marrying younger, right? And in the confines of marriage or in the confines of a long-term relationship, people have more sex in general. Like it's kind of a trope that single people are out there getting it, but like that's not real for most men. And it's definitely not real for most women, because we're trying to mate select for someone who, if we accidentally were to carry their child, they would stick by us, right? That's the idea. So it gives us like a heightened sense of like being choosy that men don't have. And even though men are still not choosy, just as they always have not been choosy, they can't find people to have sex with, which is terrifying. Because if you think about sexual energy, it's testosterone, it's hunting energy. If you think about that energy and you think about the fact that there's nothing for these men to do with that energy, it's kind of terrifying. Like, I shit on porn and video games a lot, but it does kind of scare me sometimes to think like, if I really was to tell men to ditch them, I'm sure the great majority would ditch them, find better hobbies, and then find better women, and then have sexual access, so then they'd be fine. But I think some men might give up those tools, but have value that is so low, or they would not improve themselves enough to where they would continue to not have sexual access, and then they would do violent things. Because that's kind of what happens when testosterone is sort of like emptied. It ends up like lending itself towards more violence. So the fact that I understand that puts me in a different position with men, because I do have a lot of compassion for the fact that a dude that I'm talking to, even if I have 27 matches on a dating app or something like that, or if I meet a guy in a coffee shop, like the interaction that he may have with me, if it's pleasant, like if I'm like, oh, I love your shirt, or you know, you smell really good. If I do that, or like if I'm on an app and I'm like, hey, I really love that you're into sailing, cool, they might not be getting a lot of that feedback, right, from other women. And I know that if you're watching this and you're one of those critical people who say like, oh, only 10% of the guys in the apps are getting, you know, 90% of the attention, which is true, right? I don't think it's quite that disparate in terms of, it's not like 90-10 or 95 and 5%, but it is like the Pareto principle, right? It's like there's really high quality people that are really picky and not talking to anyone. There's, you know, people in the middle that are either not that high of quality or a little lower, less quality, and they have less options, right? Most people stand somewhere in the mean where they don't have a lot of options, but they do have some. So, and women do have more, right? It doesn't, like, you take that out, but that's partially supply and demand, right? There's just less women. So if all the men are vying for the same women, then, and there's not enough to go around, the women are going to sort that out. They're going to get the riffraff off. And so, like, as a person that's on these apps and a person in this dating scene, I'm like, what type of women are men running into that are looking to marry? And it seems to me what's happening is there's a small subset of men who maybe they're hyper masculine, high performing, and they kind of didn't learn the dating game. Like, they didn't have several deep, meaningful relationships to kind of like learn skills of relationships on. So they're like underdeveloped emotionally, but they're high earning, high achieving, whatever. Women are drawn to them. They can't necessarily sustain a relationship because they don't have the skills to like get to the next level of intimacy. So they get frustrated because the relationship starts to shift, right? There's sort of a power imbalance because most women aren't like extremely simple, where it used to be men were these high earner, high achieving, whatever. Women were not in the workforce to the degree that they are now. So if a woman had a job, it was doing something super feminine and low paying, and the thought was a man would take a wife and kind of like keep her after that, right? So that woman never really had to develop any of the masculine skills, right? When women develop more masculine skills, they have a higher demand of their partner. And it's like for every amount of financial acumen the woman has, she expects the male counterpart to have equal emotional acumen, right? And there are men who are doing this, right? That are killing it. They are off the charts financially and off the charts emotionally. But what I'm seeing more often is that the men who waited to have strong emotional relationships with women, especially ones that didn't have sisters, because I think that sisters can kind of create like a mock feminine masculine polarity for people, and so that dynamic can kind of like help set a man up for what to expect in an emotional relationship with a woman. But especially if you don't have sisters, if you hold off on deep, meaningful connection until you're in your 30s, women are already expecting you to have a certain amount of skills. And I'm not saying that that's fair, right? Because I think men are more so looking for, like, maybe they don't care if you can, earn $50K a year. That's not valuable to them, right? But for women, the more we earn, the more valuable it becomes that someone is our emotional equal. Because it's almost like, well, if I put in the time to get these masculine qualities, let's say, of like earning, then the disparity isn't enough for me to respect you, because I'm like, oh, I'm down here and you're way up here. That's amazing. I just respect you so much and I'm so interested in you, and it doesn't matter that you're not able to meet me on an intimate level. I think, and for better or for worse, I'm not saying that this makes society better, because you could argue, and many people do, that it's made it markedly worse for people to date in this situation. There's a semi going by, in case you're wondering what this obnoxious noise is. So, because the disparity exists, but it's not different enough. It used to be a woman could not provide for herself. So if she aimed really high and she wanted this alpha guy, but she couldn't get him to commit, she'd have to pick somebody else, because her ability to survive was based on her matching with someone who could afford her life for her, because that wasn't a thing. Like, there weren't single women living on their own like there are now, earning their own living, right? Even 50 years ago, it wasn't a thing. Women didn't have credit scores until, I think, it was the late 70s, early 80s, right? You couldn't get a mortgage. What are you gonna do? Like, things have really changed in the last 50 years. I don't think people realize that. And so the power imbalance comes from that fact that there are men who I think are traditionally masculine, but there aren't very many women who are traditionally feminine. And that's not to say women who don't have feminine qualities, because it's like, I love to cook. I enjoy cooking so much. I made 2 beautiful human children with my body, grew him from scratch, had unmedicated like births outside of like the normal medical community. I think that I have like a track record of being a very feminine woman in terms of like serving my husband his plate first when I was married, making him every single meal that he ever ate, keeping like up with like what's best for their diet, keeping up with vitamins, keeping up with supplements, you know, like that was kind of my role. So I do think that I am a very feminine woman, but the problem is, it's not that there aren't women who are feminine. There's not very many who lack masculinity. And I think that because we don't lack masculinity, when a man who's been this high earning, high achieving, traditional masculine who only has masculinity to offer, it's kind of like the men who say like, you can't complain if men use you for pussy if pussy is all that you bring to the table, which I agree with, by the way. If all you're presenting is like, I'd be fun to have sex with, and then all the person wants is to have sex with you, that to me makes perfect sense. Like, I agree. And as someone who is a former lingerie model who used to totally post up really sexualized photos of myself in the name of empowerment, which it did feel empowering to me because I needed the outside influence to tell me that I was pretty and that I was valuable. So that's what it was for. It was like, hey, affirm to me this thing, because I obviously don't really believe it about myself. It wasn't really about getting unwanted like sexual attention, but that was kind of a byproduct and I just sort of accepted it. Whereas like now I don't do that, right? Like I make a concerted effort. I'm wearing a dress that's like very low cut right now that I put a shirt over to record this audio because it's important to me now that I don't be perceived as like some kind of sex symbol, because that's not what I feel like I'm bringing to the world or bringing to the table in a relationship. And that is real, right? What you put out there is what you're going to receive back. But what I think is happening is there's not enough women lacking masculinity to the point that they would accept that on its face as the only thing that they want. Because it's like, if a woman is, let's say she's 30% masculine and 70% feminine, let's just say. Because everyone has masculine and femininity. Some men are more like 95-5. Some men are more like 50-50. Some men are completely off balance and they're really in their feminine. A lot of men, we can blame tap water, soy, lots of stuff for that. But when a woman has, let's say, 30% masculinity and 70% femininity, and someone offers them 90% masculinity, well, I can only use 70% of that. The rest of it doesn't even matter to me. Like, it's as if I don't even see it, right? Whereas I only have, let's say, 70% femininity, so maybe I want 30% from you. I want you to be compassionate. I want you to be kind. I want you to have depth. I want you to be in touch with your intuition as a man. In addition to being, let's say, 70% masculine, right? Which is what I need. I need 70 to fill my to fill me up to 100, right? If I have 30% of my own masculinity, which that's probably close for me, right? I'm disagreeable. I'm an ENTJ. I'm a business owner. Like, because I earn my own money and all these things, it's like automatically puts me at a certain level of masculinity, even with all my feminine qualities, and even if of all the feminine ways that I am that I feel like are completely lost in our current culture, I still, like, by nature of just existing in modern society, have to have a certain amount of masculinity just to survive. And so what I think happens often is that's the default for most women. There isn't an option to not be masculine at all. Whereas the high-performing hyper-masculines, they don't see femininity as a need. They don't see it as like as something they need to develop, because men who work in like male-dominated workspaces, having high masculinity, high testosterone is only going to benefit them, right? It makes them seem like a leader. They're a hunter. They're a trophy chaser. They're earning. And so they're very supported in the masculine. And what happens if someone, it's classical conditioning, right? If we keep giving you a reward for your masculinity is just going to grow and grow and grow. So we have all of these men who have, I shouldn't say all these men, it's very rare, but I would say the type of men that I tend to be attracted to. There are these masculine men that never saw engaging with their feminine side and not becoming feminine, let's be clear, Every woman on this earth wants a man who's predominantly masculine, even the ones that say, oh, I don't want to be told what to do, like, you know, you can't be jealous and territorial over me, that's controlling. Even the ones that say that with their mouth do not mean it. Because what makes their pussy wet is someone that's like, I want you here, this is what we're doing, meet me at 8. Like, that is what we are designed to want, right? It is evolutionary biology. You can call it God, you can call it whatever you want. It's real. So like it's almost as if we're also like, I think it's especially men, right? It seems like especially men are kind of on this like weird, either I throw away all feminine parts of myself in order to chase this masculine that I get this positive feedback for, and now I have no skills. And so this feminine woman that he wants, and let's just say these feminine women are rare, right? I cannot tell you how many men have told me that women right now who are 22 to 35, like, don't know how to cook, don't even want to have kids, maybe, are like, I don't have kids till I'm 35, don't want to not work, don't want to give up social media, like, don't want to get rid of their guy friends, like, they don't want to do anything that would be considered like traditional leadership from a masculine, which, if that makes you happy, do it, right? Go be with a feminine man that lets you do whatever you want and worships you, if that sounds good. I used to think that sounded good until I had it. And you learn fast, if you get it, that the idea of someone placating you all the time, it's not real on some level, I think, because like men aren't designed for that. So that's a whole other podcast episode. So we're gonna stick on this, right? So because there's a sort of default level of like women having to be masculine because of the modern era, and to some degree men being forced to be feminine, right? Because there's like, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and corporations, which are like, you need to respect people's pronouns and all these things, all these like very catty sort of like emotionally led corporate structures, right? Or you have to obey your boss, who's like a dude who's not as good as you. So there are like feminine aspects to like corporate life, but I feel like it's far less than the amount of masculinity women have to like maintain to survive. So by default, having a man who has like that extra masculinity, I feel like what happens is it is sort of like, it just spills out the top of the cup. And then the other hand that you need to be held and be met at, there's nothing to meet you. Because you're like, I want to be, you know, equally yoked. I want to be 100% in my relationship. That's how it's going to function. Like if I'm the 80% feminine, 20% masculine, I need you to be the 80% masculine, 20% feminine, because I still need to meet you, right? Like as a man, you should want your woman to be masculine enough that if you're not home and someone was to break into your house, she knows how to use a gun and can protect your children. That's necessary, right? That's a masculine drive to be protective, but you need it. You need your woman to be have enough testosterone, right? Have enough testosterone to not be estrogen dominant, so her body isn't just pouring fat rolls everywhere and out of whack, right? She can sleep well, she eats well, right? These are things that you need and require. So I think I'm discovering now that that's kind of the problem, right? We have these ultra feminine men who now admire women, right? It used to be men were worthy of respect for hard work, hunting, and women were sort of playing the supportive role, partially because of, you know, they had to because of the way society was designed, and partially society was designed that way because it fit the natural function of things, right? It's like women have to bear children. That puts them at odds with a hard work schedule that went through every single season, right? They go through a reproductive phase of their life where they are less productive, right? So it makes sense to hold them out, hypothetically, of a job market, right? That's equality, not equity, right? Equality says, like, if you can perform to this level, you're hired, but if you can't, I don't have to give you a job. But now we say that's not true. Just because she's going to take off work for several months and all this stuff, we have to take her because it's not our fault. And you could argue for that being good for women, right? Then women aren't relying on abusive men, right? There are bad men that women would have been stuck with, and that's scary, right? I would have been one of them. Been in a marriage that I couldn't get out of because I wouldn't be able to support myself. So I am thankful for the way society has changed and modernity. I I think sometimes people get into these like red pill kind of spaces where they're like, or these trad wife spaces, which I love the trad wife movement. I love everything about traditional women. I feel like I am a traditional woman in a lot of ways because I realize the evolutionary biology in me wants to be with a man who's at my same level of competence or higher. Like, I want to date across and up success hierarchies. I didn't used to realize that that was so important to me, but it is. And I know if I can respect a man, I can respect his leadership, right? I was always like, why would you let men lead? Because I would choose men, or I was also appointed a man at birth. And that man was not worthy of my respect. He was not worthy to be my leader. And so I just walked around going, men aren't worthy of respect. They're not worthy of leadership. I can do this better. And I could than all of the feminine men that had been in my life, right? It wasn't until I started meeting masculine men that I was like, oh, so this is why women submit. It's not out of like oh no, he's making me do all this stuff. It's like, wow, this person is so smart and so bright that him encouraging me to do a cold plunge at 45 degrees, even though I'm terrified, is actually good leadership. That's going to make my body healthier, right? He's not like saying like, submit to me and like clean the bathroom with a toothbrush, you know, like that's wild, right? It's like gross. But good men are good leaders, right? And then it's easy to be in a submissive role to a good leader. And so I just never dated up and across success hierarchies, so I didn't know any better. But what I'm finding is that a lot of the men that are hyper masculine aren't finding their equal. They're not finding a 95% traditional woman, right? Because that would kind of be like a young, like, virgin who works at like a local Bible college in like a nursery room. You know what I mean? Like that's who realistically would be a 95% traditional feminine woman. And those women don't exist anymore. So now all these men with this high testosterone, high masculine energy are like having to choose from modern choices. And this is the part where I get a little bit preachy because it is kind of personal for me. So I dated a guy. If you go back in the annals of the podcast, you could probably figure out who I'm referring to. And he ultimately decided that the logistics of dating a single mom is not something he's interested in. And he made it clear it had nothing to do with me. I've kind of since peeled that apart to realize that I think he just wasn't emotionally mature enough for like a committed relationship. Men have this idea that if they like still have the option to leave, like a very real option to leave, they feel safer, right? If you get involved with someone who already has children and like wants to be established and wants a marriage, like you're in. That hypothetical idea, like even though I want to say, you know, of course any man could break up with me after a year if it wasn't working, like I wouldn't want him to feel obligated to stay with me because I have children or because I want to get married, right? It's like we're on this journey together. Like if it stops working for someone, you should break up with them, right? That's how I feel in my heart. But I can see as a man how that's like saddling yourself up to be like all the way committed right now, and that could be terrifying, right? But I was like, okay, like what is this person looking for then? Because like they're looking for me because they said, you're perfect, you did nothing wrong, you're exactly what I want, but I don't want, like nothing logistically is going to change, so I have to break up with you on logistics. And I'm like, okay, I'm trying to imagine me as like a 25-year-old or a 26-year-old or a 27-year-old. Because those are the people that most likely, that are worth marrying, that weren't already married, right? Because any woman my age who is worth marrying would have already been married. In my opinion, because otherwise you're dealing with hyper masculine women who have focused on school, on a career, and that's great for them. They're in their masculine, but I don't think most traditionally masculine men are looking for those women. I think they're looking for women who are softer, want to have a home, want to have a family. So I'm like, where are those women, right? Like, where is his perfect match? And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, you know, this is kind of heartbreaking because I'm like, I know you're passing up on me, which is sad for me on some level, because I'm like, that is sad for me because I really love this person. But on another level, it's really not sad for me because like, I know that I am like really rare because I talk to men and I ask them like, do women do this? Do women do that? Are women willing to like get rid of social media for you? Are women willing to like block their exes for you? And like men are consistently like, no, like women don't want to be told what to do. Like they want to keep their job, they don't want to quit. Like I've said, like guys will be like, would you be willing to quit work and like be a stay-at-home mom, you know, and like have more kids? I'm like 100%. 100% I would. And I love what I do. It doesn't feel like work at all. And I think that, you know, my masculine husband would understand that, because the work that I do, it's in line with already what I'm doing: child rearing, taking care of kids, health coaching. It's like I already am buying these ingredients, and I'm already a wealth of knowledge to my community, so it makes sense for me to keep doing it, because if you're good at something, you should get paid to do it, right? And don't do anything you love and that you're good at for free. But like I would be willing to, like, if that impeded my ability to take care of children or my husband, like I'd be happy to get rid of it. And most women do not feel that way. So it's like, even though I do feel bad for me that like I lost him and I really cared for him as a person, I'm like more sad for him because I don't think the thing that he's looking for exists. So he's going to continue to like chase this hypothetical unicorn until he comes to like realize that it's not real. And so I've been telling men lately that have been like DMing me on Instagram and stuff, like, if you find a woman that was marryable at 22 or 21 or 23 and she did that, she decided like that's what I want to do with my life, which I was all in, right? I got pregnant at 21 and I was like, all right, I'm a mom now, I want to have a family. And even though that didn't work out, I still think the fact that someone wanted to get me pregnant and wanted to, like, because I was not left, you know, I was the one that chose to leave. And I'm not saying that that's good. They were extenuating circumstances that I've now come to like complete, and maybe not complete knowledge, because I'm 32, I'm sure I'm going to learn more things, but I think I can comfortably say now where I'm at right now is that my problem in the relationships that I've had that have failed they've been improperly polarized. It's been me egging the relationship on, me wanting it, me working at it, me encouraging the man, you know, and not in a way where I was like his support. It was like I was his mother. I was nagging him. I had to get them to work harder. Both of my two longest term relationships were 3 years and 6 years, and both of the men like couldn't keep down jobs, like had several jobs in the relationship. And I was the one kind of constantly caretaking and in the mother role to grown men. And that's not native to like female biology. Even if we think like, oh, I want to be in a real partnership, 50-50 or 100-100, even better. Like the idea that there shouldn't be someone who has 51%, that's like the tiebreaker that we both choose as like the natural leader, is like a huge mistake. And I think that I don't know that women can truly love men that they don't respect. It's like when I lose respect for a man, I feel internally this feeling of like, oh, I'm repulsed by them. Like my physical body wants to be away from them when I lose respect for them, when I think they don't have integrity. And I think that that is so close to how women decide who to love. It's like who they can respect, right? And so I did such a disservice to myself by staying in relationships that I didn't respect the man. So all that to say, I've been telling men that, you know, come into my DMs being like, what do I do in this like modern dating landscape? I'm like, find a woman who is ready to settle down at 22 and 23 and did, right? Find someone who was married, someone who does have a kid. I know that's not conventional wisdom, because, you know, we got the Tates out there and all these like male influencers are like, if you date a single mom, you're a cuck or a simp or whatever the story is, right? Somebody else's kid. It's like, if you want your woman to be a mother, if that's important to you, I don't think whether she has another child, especially if she can already financially support them. So like that's not what she's looking to you to do, right? I'm not saying all guys should go up there and find a women that are struggling and like on government assistance and like go in there and fix them. I think that's a horrible idea. Don't be a fixer. But if you see a woman, she's clearly able to take care of her kids the best she can, and she wants to be a traditional wife, it's not going to be a huge financial, like it shouldn't be. You should not be sweating the extra dollars that it might cost you because you're involved with her children. Because at the end of the day, you are taking a gamble on unknown, right? It's like, I know if a woman is raising her children traditionally and she's a traditional woman, that chances are that's who she is. having children isn't going to fundamentally change her. If you marry a girl who's never had children before, you may think she's on board to be homesteading, homeschooling, not going to vaccinate your kids, going to do all the stuff that you think would be perfect, that would be super traditional, and then she can have this baby and fundamentally change. Because I know I fundamentally changed. Like, I was not a trad wife, like, healthy food loving activist until I had children. I didn't care about the way the world was until I had children. Like, it took that to change me and give me wisdom. And I think a lot of women end up in that same position. But it's like, what kind of wisdom is your woman going to get bestowed on? Especially if you take one of these girls from Gen Z who don't really want to be married anyway, or don't really see the value in it, or the value in submission, or the value in, these more like Judeo-Christian mores, right? It's getting to be less and less women who are like that in general. So my advice right now is that if you can find a woman who has wholesome and healthy reasons for why her relationship didn't work out, you will be in a situation of the devil you know, which is logistical problem, right? Which is super sort outable and think outable, mostly. Especially if the woman left the man, because chances are, like, women, they don't leave masculine leaders, right? We know that. Fundamentally, we know that. We all know that. So that person is not going to, like, fight you for power because you're going to be the alpha in the situation. So that's my advice right now. I honestly think it's quite good advice. Because I think the reality of finding not to say that no man could do it, because I'm sure the best, the richest, the whatever men could definitely do, or you can passport bro and leave the country. Like, there are options. So I'm not trying to say there are no options if you don't want to do that, if you really feel strongly. But if what you are looking for is someone who is like traditional and that you can trust that person is going to maintain that as like a part of their fundamental fabric and makeup, it'd be better just to look for someone who's already doing it than to like hope for the best that you can either convince someone your entire life, or that person's not going to change, because everyone obviously does change and whatever, and some people's baggage is more physical, right? Like, it's well, here's what I did with my life, right? And some is more psychological and in their heart, and so it takes time getting to know them, and that's how you sort out sort of what's wrong with them. But there's something wrong with everyone, right? Like, nobody's perfect. It's like nobody in their 30s who's dating is like, I was the best match always. It's like, no, some of us were trash at different times. Like, I was trash. I was a compensatory narcissist of sorts. I wasn't like full-blown narcissist, but like I was someone who thought if I overgive and I'm like extremely compassionate and so loving, then I can point the finger and be like, you're the jerk. And I now know that like not having boundaries is just as big of a problem as like overstepping someone's boundaries. It's like if everyone holds up their own boundaries, then nobody gets unfairly penetrated. It's just the fact that people walk around being like, I'm an open heart, do whatever you want to me, that there is an ability for someone who's a predator to take advantage. It's because those people haven't built themselves up enough and don't see their own value enough to like hold their own boundaries. And I know this probably sounds like to the end of this podcast to close it up, it might sound a little bit like I'm selling myself. And I promise that I'm not, because I made a very sincere, very grievous promise to myself that I would be alone if that's what it took. I don't think it's going to take that. I think I'm going to be happily married and be watching this back and smiling at myself and saying, girl, you didn't know. But I made a very hard, almost feels like I made a deal with the devil, even though it wasn't the devil. I think it was God, that if I could get out of this marriage that was so torturous to me and broke me on such a fundamental level, if I was able to get out of that, then I would stay alone, if that's what it took. Like, that I would just raise my kids and be alone. And like, I love masculine energy, and it's not hard for me as a somewhat attractive 32-year-old to find someone who will at least sit at dinner with me, so it's not like I'm lonely. But everybody knows that's not what our hearts are yearning for. It's not just for someone to physically accept us to be in their presence. It's like a meaningful heart connection. And it hasn't been great, but I can tell that I'm getting better personally, because the people that I'm attracting to me are more stoic, more kind, more masculine. And I know that that is setting me up for what will ultimately be success. Even if it's just to teach me what that means in my life. Maybe I don't end up marrying it, but at least I get to know what it looks like, what it feels like, what it smells like, and healing that wound that I had where I needed a masculine as a child and I didn't have it. And then I chased feminine men thinking that would make me feel better. I could fix it, right? I could fix that problem I had, not getting that from my dad, and I could get it from these men. I could teach them, I could fix them, and in some way fix him, you know? That's kind of what childhood, how it manifests. Childhood trauma manifests as you trying to fix the problem you had as a kid in a new person. And I think that I finally sorted it out. And I'm open to it being too late for me. I truly am. I'm open to it. But I think if I can't find my best person, if I could influence even one person to feel like there are good women out there that did try to do it the right way, and maybe try to do it the right way with the wrong person, that they're still worth something, and they might be able to make you super happy. And if you understand that masculine feminine dynamic, you will be a lot happier in your life. So that's it. It was a long one today. I hope you loved it. Good night.
Thanks for listening to my podcast, Daily Dose of B. I really hope you liked it. If you did, leave me a 5-star review. You know the drill. It'll help bump me in the algos, and I will love you forever. Have a great one.